First in the studio, Real Talk with Andy Blood. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good afternoon. No, it's morning. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really, really good. Thank you for having me, especially if this is your first in the studio moment.
I'm going for sleep after this. I've had another live and I'm like, all the sensations. 2 coffees at my favourite daily bread. And then, like, it's crazy. Like, if you're not used to being out with people, being out.
And
it's like your eye contact. I'm like, oh my God.
And it's the euphoria, right? It's the adrenaline, and then coming off that, and then coming down.
And you go on holiday
wanting
tomorrow.
to go for a rest. Yes, I am.
Where are you going tomorrow?
I'm taking my son to Waipu. So
do you get released? Can you get out there?
We've all been, well, at midnight we're released as Aucklanders, like butterflies, we're released. And so depending on traffic, depending on weather, we're in the middle of a cyclone. We're going up there for a week, hopefully before the stampede of Aucklanders.
Is anyone going to come to Auckland?
Well, they say 12,000 people are going to the airport to go to Fiji. Yeah, who wants to come into Auckland? I don't know.
My daughter is this week is actually on the Waitemata kayaking.
Right. Wow.
Do you think that'll be fun?
Wow.
This week?
I think the swell will be pretty big, don't you?
Yeah, I think it would be. I should do an intro. So, Andy Blood.
Hammy? Shall I call you Hammy?
You can call me Hammy. ECD. Actually, I thought when I looked at your background, right, UK, Singapore, New Zealand, Australia, New Zealand.
Yeah.
Did I miss anywhere? Living?
No. Worked almost everywhere. Lived in the countries you mentioned.
And ECD is Executive Creative Director. Which means you're like the creative insight person.
No, it means you are, you're nearly the general. The general is the chief creative officer who sits on the board and is the voice of creative on the board. And then below the CCO, you've got the ECD, who then marshals the CDs, the creative directors, who then marshal individual teams or groups of creatives according to discipline or client or vertical.
Pretty cool, right? Because you've had this history in Adland, and then you jumped to Facebook.
Yeah.
So you went client side from being agency side, and then you're OYO now. Do you know what that stands for?
Yeah, on your own. On your own.
Is that exciting?
Yeah, it's very exciting.
So where are you today? Like, who are you today? Andy Blood? Bloodster?
I had a plan to leave Facebook at my 5-year anniversary. So half a decade's a really big deal at Facebook.
Yeah.
And I hit that in July. And I also had a long-standing ambition, but a 2-year plan to publish a book. So 2.5 years ago, I started writing a book.
There's the book. Let's show it.
On creativity.
Full Bleed by Andy Blood. Show it to the camera.
It's called Full Bleed, and the blurb, it's remarkable stories and hard-won lessons from the coalface of creativity and the bleeding edge of advertising and technology.
Amazing, these hard for you and I to hear because of the rate of the rain, but apparently, PJ, it's all good, right? Yeah.
These are quality mics.
So that book, how long did that take you to read, write?
Writing it was a 2-year process, and it was something I carved. I did it every day at 5:30 for an hour, my weekends, my holidays, and I just stuck to the plan so that literally at midnight on leaving Facebook, I would be able to turn up and present myself as an author, a speaker, a maker, a publisher, and I'd done the groundwork for what's next. Whatever what's next was going to be. So essentially, it's a 44,000-word CV for someone like me who wants to have a conversation about creativity with anyone, business, big or small, individual, government, doesn't matter, about that subject, across almost any conceivable topic.
So is that your why?
I like lighting the fires of people's own creative fire. Yeah.
Which is pretty awesome, right?
Yeah. If this, if the book launches 1,000 good ideas, then I'll be happy. If 1,000 people have one good idea each, then really my job is done in that respect.
Do you
Yeah.
think this next iteration of the world is going to see creatives more embraced?
Yes, in a hopeful, optimistic, and utopian view, yes. And
So not working for the
so
man
for
or the woman.
so for 20 years, for 25 years, it seems to me, having been in the world of creativity, deeply embedded within it, that creativity has often been or became a lost leader for the media dollar. So, media sums outstrip many other sums. We live on a planet that's obsessed by media. And, perhaps we ought to be obsessed with creativity first to put more value or greater inputs into the system. So, and it's kind of becoming apparent if you listen to the conversations that are really prevalent now, and they were beginning at Facebook before I left, and I was really sad to leave. It's the idea of the rise of the creator economy. The idea that we are building a metaverse or metaverses, which need to be brought to life by creativity or by creative people, or imbued with creativity from the start, and it's going to need millions and millions of creative people to do that
Millions.
across all disciplines, is almost a turning point to, the value of what creative people do finally has never been more highly regarded. And then if you look into one of the reasons why I've been really interested in NFTs, because for the first time in 25 years, we're putting a price on creativity, at least in the first instance of artistic merit and ideas.
Do you,
Because the internet for the first 2 decades made creativity and many other things free and devalued many of the things we do in the cause in the cause that everything is free and everything is open and everything must be shared, which is great. But along the way, creative people lost the ability to have an income and make a living by pursuing their passion.
and getting repeat income,
Yeah,
not one time.
yeah. And I think we are perhaps at a pivotal moment where creative people can now make a living from doing that. And I actually, from day one, September the 1st, post Facebook for me, how can I make a living on a daily basis as a creative person, almost became an open canvas, because it's, yes, I've written a book about creativity, I've published it, I have published it as an NFT, I've created a lot of artwork, I've created a lot of conversations around those subjects in a way that I did not foresee and didn't think was ever possible.
But
And that's what I've done day in, day out now
so
for 120 days.
how can it be an NFT when it's in front of me as a physical book? And I bought the Kindle version last night.
Well, even the language of books of, did you buy a copy of the book? I brought a copy of the book in for you today, and you bought a copy that happened to be Kindle.
Yeah.
You didn't buy the book. You didn't buy the artifact. The one singular piece that was the origin artifact of everything else. So I decided to make the book as an NFT and make it for sale, including all global physical and digital publishing rights. So you weren't buying a copy, you were buying, if you wanted to, the original, which gave you permission to make untold thousands of copies. Because that's, the authentication or
Yep.
the digital proof of ownership that comes with an NFT and the blockchain meant that is, the smart contract was the important part of the deal.
Has there been a lot of books brought to market as an NFT?
We did our research and we were quite happy to call it a world first book as NFT approach. perhaps not the world first. A few people have sort of moved in different ways, but probably not to the extent that I did, which was, buy this, you get the lot.
And there's a
And
secret
yeah, there were
phrase.
kind of,
Because, everyone has to give an alpha on my talks. You
well, I
have to.
went all in on NFT. So I made it a Metaverse First book launch, and that was actually driven by Auckland going into lockdown practically the day I came out of a salaried job. And what I'd been wanting to do for 2 years, to make a physical copy of the book, actually wasn't possible.
Yeah.
So the only possible opportunity for me was to embrace digital first. And then what is the leading edge of digital first? It became Metaverse First, NFT First, etc. So I went all in on that for 2 months before the physical copy came out. And I think it just added to the storytelling and by way of intrigue and essentially jeopardy that, we offered the book for sale sight unseen. So we published the contents page as part of the NFT. The book was available in 3 different edits.
Yeah.
The master edit, a condensed version, and a super condensed version, each with individual artwork. And people could peruse any of the contents pages and go, hey, I might be all in for that, or that, or that, or not. And then we did a surrounding collection of, I'm going to say, traditional art NFTs already. Yeah. It was just art as NFTs. And then the third layer was deep level integration, which is the 12-word secret recovery password of a digital wallet is now hidden in the book. So for me,
so you've got to find it.
Yeah. So that,
and you're not going to tell me where it is.
I'll tell you afterwards, off camera, and I'm sure the recording will be carrying on. No, what we did do, what I decided to do was, I needed a digital wallet, so it's my digital wallet, because I needed to know the words of the recovery phrase. So that meant I had to do one more revision of the entire book to make sure those words were in it, because we'd scanned the book to find out which ones were and which ones weren't. And it's not as easy as it sounds suddenly to spend 2 years writing, revising, editing to your final item, to suddenly start putting things back in to cater for words that were, not present in the article. There are potentially a few bent sentences going in that kind of like would be, what's that all about? And that's there for a joke, but you know what I mean? It could be quite easy to spot, that sentence doesn't make sense in this book, except within the wider context of it's hiding a word.
Now, it's nearly Christmas, and I'm just wondering, PJ, is there a coffee for Andy? Should we bring it over so that you can have your coffee?
Thank you.
And also, I'm a bit worried about my mic is drooping there, PJ. Should we just lift it up a bit, or is it all right?
Thank you very much. So I'll just close the conversation on the password. So basically,
better.
The 12 words are buried in there.
Yep.
Now, the book has 44,000 words. So I guess you're either the sort of person that might open a book and stick a pin in 12 times and get lucky. The lottery, the lottery
12
tickets.
and 44,000.
It's the numbers are against you, but you never know. Or you're the sort of person that might buy a digital copy and then apply a little bit of strategy to it and go, okay, of 44,000 words, how many are repeated? What is the constraint of a digital wallet? Is there a character limit at 6? How many words are over 7 characters, etc. I think you could pass 44,000 down to 1,000 or 2 with a bit of work.
Or you could just be really nice to you and then get the phrase.
Yeah. Or what I might do, because I want to keep the powder dry on this for a little bit, because the book sold 500 copies, and I'm really pleased with that. It's, that's 5 times more than I thought I would ever sell. I think there needs to be enough people playing the game to make it interesting.
Yeah.
So
how many is that? 5,000?
Oh, I'd love to get up to 1,000. Anywhere between 1,000 and 5,000. Yeah. To make enough people to kind of, uncover enough people who might want to play. What I might actually do is publish openly the pre-revised version. So literally, somebody can, or anybody can then have access to the version that doesn't contain the words. Then you've got to buy the book to find out what it does contain, and then you can try and match the two
Who's
or
the book?
mismatch the
Who's the
two.
book targeted at? The reader that you.
Well, first and foremost, creative people.
Yeah.
So people who make a living in the realm of ideas and creativity, whatever that means. And then moving out from that, it might be the people who employ those people who want to know what makes them tick, because you'll get a very good understanding from the book about what does
Yeah.
it, what does the creative mind of a creative person look and feel and sound like? What's the insight there? And then you've got the people who manage them. You've got companies who employ these people but want to get more out of them.
Yeah.
And by and large, companies don't do a very good job of getting the best out of the creative people that they employ, and then really working all the way out until the lay reader. Can somebody in the street get something out of this? And I always set out to be. It's got to be insightful. It's got to be useful, and it's got to be entertaining.
And it is already. I've
And
read three chapters, five chapters.
if I can make that work, then somebody who doesn't know me, someone who doesn't know the creative industries, might pick this up somewhere in a bookshop or a cafe, etc., and flick through it and go, "My God, that's interesting," and keep going.
So we've got, Andy has donated 2 of these copies to the Monarchy community. So there they are, all wrapped and ready to go. So for you to go into the draw for those, you have to join monarchy.io and you have to put some comments in the stream of Real Talks where Andy's chat will be, and then we will collectively choose a couple of winners for Christmas.
Yeah.
That's very kind of you.
And they are, it's my absolute pleasure. And they are wrapped by, I think it's a young company called Mau. Mau, M-A-U. And I love the idea that I think their line is wrapped in language.
Beautiful.
So it's, well-designed wrapping paper, well thought out. It's by a young girl whose career has taken off in that small business very, very quickly, very, very recently. And that's kind of, if people like that can be inspired by their own ideas and their own passions, their own momentum, then we all can.
Around this book, I saw an image that said, "When mad men meet math men."
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Well, I think if you mention to many people that you had a long career in advertising, then what will spring to mind is Don Draper and, the escapades of all the folk in Mad Men. So Madison Avenue,
Yeah.
That was a kind of, I guess, the global epicenter of creative culture in the States in the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, perhaps the 80s.
Yeah.
In terms of advertising being a global mass media, advertising being popular culture, advertising, making all the brands that are now household items famous. And I think there's a certain perception or stereotype of what kind of person was in the industry at the time and how they might behave and exist.
And math men is the
math
algorithms.
men being the data, the analytics, the engineers, the coders, etc.
Is that strangling creativity or enhancing it?
I think it's providing a different way to look at it. I will be super honest about that quote, and it's one of the stories in the book that is mentioned, and most people would be aware of. If we talked about Cambridge Analytica, then people, perhaps would be aware of the data furor that Facebook got itself into or was embroiled in with Cambridge Analytica in around 2018.
Okay.
When you had the beginnings of a group of people that were attempting to take as much data as they could from social platforms and then use that data for the harnessing of political messages. So you've got, the Trump campaign, you've got the elections in the UK, you've got elections all around the world, being driven by companies like Cambridge Analytica, who were the math men coming to the table saying that we can take this messaging and this storytelling by the likes of the madmen, we can marry that to the power of data, and we can create unbelievable forces of change.
For good or for bad.
For good or for bad. You can't just say you're a power and then go, but we're only a power for good. You know what I mean? Power can be wielded equally. But Alexander Nix, I believe, who was the CEO of Cambridge Analytica, said in one of their video pitch documents, we are not madmen, we are math men. That was his line.
Yeah.
So I've just kind of stolen it and repurposed it, because having been on both sides now, I can see the kind of weaponry available to each.
When did you, if we shift a little bit to the metaverse and that, when did you first feign curiosity around crypto and Bitcoin?
If you want my truthful answer to that,
All the truth.
2013.
Wow.
I was involved in a business pitch for a company called Mastercoin, who were a small, fledgling Israeli startup. Now, with an 8-9 year sort of ahead of that, it's now easy to look back and see what a big player Mastercoin became in that space.
Crazy.
There's a lot of conversation about Mastercoin in the Infinity Machine, which is the origin story of Ethereum. And somebody asked me to come on board and do a pitch, do some creative for the pitch, and I came up with the idea of a central bank that printed art as currency. And
8 years ago.
2013. And the idea that this art installation would actually be, we would make the workings of this visible in a huge transparent space, and we would essentially see something along the lines of a color photocopier or similar linked to the gold standard, and on the tray of the photocopier was a big tray of artistically designed currency, banknotes. So the photocopier was set running, and it would literally just print out artistic interpretations of currency. And as it did that, because it was connected to the gold standard, you would then see the price of every single sheet decrease as the volume of currency, artistic currency in circulation increased. And that was really the beginnings of conversation about, what are currencies? What is a banknote? What is all the iconography on a banknote about? And essentially, one day we will all be able to make our own artistic banknotes of currency.
Did you?
So we presented that, and this is...
What did they say?
Well, this is, nobody understood it. Nobody got it. Even within the industry at the time, nobody understood it. And it was one of those situations where you go, that's fine. I know that's a great idea. So I've fulfilled my that's why I was brought into this.
And then if we jump forward...
and then you jump forward in time to this year, and the very last chapter in the book, the coda of the book, that would be numerically titled Chapter 71.
Yeah, there's 71 chapters.
Yeah, is set in May this year, when Playboy sold an NFT called One Satoshi, Satoshi being the
original
infamous
founder,
creator of the Bitcoin, and the image of the NFT was Lena Soderbergh. Now, Lena Soderbergh is famous for being a 1972 Playboy centerfold, Miss November, whose image was appropriated by male scientists in 1973 to make the first ever digital images, essentially the forerunner of the JPEG.
Yep.
It just so happens that at Facebook, I'd made a documentary with a great group of people about the life of Lena Soderbergh and how this came to happen. Now, we did that on behalf of a client called Code Like a Girl and another client called Creatable, and it was about bias in technology
Yeah.
and how our present behaviors are often encoded, our biases are encoded into the products we make without us even thinking about that. And they can have long-term consequences.
What does a creative strategist at Facebook do?
Well, it is the marriage of somebody that you're not just a great creative thinker, you actually have to understand, bring your analytical mind to bear if you've got one, or if your strategic mind, which is, yes, you've got this great idea. What is the most powerful way you can take that to an audience to deliver the maximum desired result? So you understand creativity, you understand platform, you understand people.
On a scale of 0 to 10, where are we on the journey of the metaverse and Web3? If 0 is we're at the beginning, where are we right now?
Well, the Metaverse origin story is told in a book by Neil Stephenson that was published in 1991. And it's called Snow Crash.
Is it?
And in that, he creates the word the metaverse.
Yeah.
And the entire story is told in a parallel virtual reality, a simulation of the real world in which the inhabitants of their story spend an equal amount of their time. So they're living in the real world, they're living in the metaverse, and those two worlds overlap. So that story was written in 1991, and the image that created and is as valid now as it was then. It's brilliant, and I went through it again in June, and there's almost nothing you can fault about that portrayal of what a future metaverse might be, and that portrayal of the metaverse, I think we are going to.
So where are we, though?
I would
You've got to answer the question between 0 and 10.
Well, if Snow Crash, if the book was 1, because it's gone from 0 to 1 in Peter Thiel's famous phrase, we've gone from nothing to 1, then we're potentially at 3.
Interesting.
And it's taken 3 decades to get to 3. I suspect it's only going to take a few years to get to...
It's going to speed up.
4 to 10. Yeah.
It's going to speed up a lot, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a math formula to hacking the Web3 world? And what I mean by that is someone wrote it takes 10,000 hours to be an expert in something, right?
Yeah.
To play the piano, play golf, be a lawyer. It takes a lot of time, right? So, I suppose what I'm asking is, do you think there is a linear path to succeeding in Web3, or you believe it's a non-linear path?
Yeah, I think it's the path looks a bit like that. I think it's a really
the same in
it's a
any
really
other,
messy path.
Isn't that the same in any other startup,
yeah.
SME, corporate?
Yeah.
Corporate, interestingly, needs to learn to do this more, don't they? Go all over the
Yeah. I think the advocates of Web3, and you would know many of them in this country, are visionaries in their own right and put a huge amount of their own energy and intellect into building products that might be used to build or furnish a Web3 environment.
They're out there.
Yeah. There's a lot of evangelists doing that.
If I think about my mates that I grew up with, all corporate lawyers, they just go, Hammy, can you stop putting all that fucking shit on our WhatsApp channel about the metaverse?
Yeah.
I'm like, that's fine. You still earn your $2 million, your $3 million, but one day, someone's coming to eat your ass.
Yeah. And, many people do comment that, in 1993, most people, when questioned, had a pretty, no one cared for the internet. Nobody could foresee a future for the internet or the World Wide Web or any practical use for it whatsoever. People would laugh at the idea that the internet was going to revolutionize all our lives. And in many ways, I suppose we are at that point now, where, and scarily, people are already sick about hearing of the metaverse, even though, the word's only really been tossed around in popular culture for a year. even though its origin goes back 3 decades, and people are already a little bit overexposed to this idea. But I actually think that one of the master strokes about what Facebook just did this week or last week was opening up Horizon Worlds to be a platform where anyone in the world, should they choose to do so and have the necessary creativity and
Can
perhaps
join.
savviness or intellect, can build their own world in the metaverse. I do rather suspect that the metaverse is likely to come out of that than many of the other attempts that might be taking place, because I think it's going to be the 12-year-old kid who nobody is really aware of or looking out for is going to bring something so unique or brilliant or welcoming, or just, I don't know, whatever it is. Somebody right now will be building the flame of something which will become a metaverse, and not the companies that are all deciding that they're trying to do that now.
It's super interesting because I think many investors struggle with allocating money to the creative endeavors
Yeah,
of what will be the metaverse of the future, which is why they're all going into infrastructure, the picks and
yeah,
shovels, because that's
yeah,
more certainty.
yeah,
But I think they're struggling with going, I'm going to back the 12-year-old kid,
yeah, yeah. Well,
which is a great opportunity, by the way.
I was in Facebook when the pivot to the metaverse began, and the pivot to becoming the metaverse company began. And it was an extraordinary to watch Mark Zuckerberg give a 2-hour presentation on video live about his vision for where the company was going to go next. And it was the single most exciting, visionary, and amazing thing that I'd witnessed in the 5 years that I'd been at a company. And I'd never seen Mark that energized about anything at all, ever. And it was clearly, the flame and the passion were lit in terms of the excitement about what a potential metaverse could be.
But
And the reason for doing it was actually set out in really, really simple terms. And it was, if you've got 1 million kids playing Fortnite right now, and they're all spending $100
yeah,
a year on virtual clothing within Fortnite, that's about $1 billion. Imagine what happens when you've got 100 million people deciding on their virtual interior design, their virtual content, their virtual clothing, their avatars. We're going to end up with a complete economy that is the equal and opposite simulacrum of the one that we move in. So, it's going to be enormous. And the business in that is going to be enormous.
how do you react to,
So, any companies that are doubting that,
yeah,
well, fine, be a naysayer, but then people not doubting that will be taking this opportunity to go headlong into it.
how do you react to the counter around Facebook and Meta, which is people being a bit cynical about them?
Well, I think I don't know the definition of Web3, but I do know that people position it as being decentralized and distributed in a place where anybody can build any business or application on the blockchain,
Yeah.
versus a more centralized web experience, which we've had for the last 10 to 15 years, where the web is now owned by a handful of giant companies in Silicon Valley.
Yeah.
And they are very different
And
world,
most can't traverse
very
from
different worldviews.
old model to new model.
Yeah,
That's
very
going to be
different.
very
Yeah.
interesting.
So incumbency will slow people down, and DAOs and other startups will move faster. As to how it all falls out, who knows? But I do think the democratizing effect of a company with the scale of Facebook, now Meta, having invested significant time, resource, and energy into making these amazing platforms, probably is going to propel the beginning of what it will become.
So one of the things that I get with Web3 is that it fundamentally shifts the unit economics for returns from community, right? You
Yeah,
don't have to be as big as a music artist
yeah,
on Spotify
yeah,
as in if you get 5,000 fans paying, right? So that
Yeah.
we're going to get the generation of what we thought was subscale creative
Yeah.
communities.
Yeah.
But the very interesting thing is which one of those will scale. So as a venture capitalist, what I think,
Yeah.
if I'm watching all these subscale communities in the old world, I'll be going, which ones do I think have the potential to scale that I might back?
Yeah. Yeah. I think if you think back to, I think it's the origin story of Spotify, which is, we want to make streaming music easier than stealing music. And if we can do that, then we'll succeed. And essentially, Spotify has, by making a platform that is so simple, intuitive, and brilliant. It's actually, the user experience is far better than, ripping, stealing, pirating music.
Will Spotify be alive in 2025?
Well, at the moment, Web3 and the decentralized web is so complex that it's really, really difficult for anybody who might want to get into it. It's really complex, and I think that's the nature of
So you don't know.
a
You're saying,
decentralized thing does not have one common application.
yeah.
So it's complex.
So you're saying unlikely it'll be dead.
I think there'll be plenty of musicians. I like the idea of your subscale communities. I mean, the idea that everybody can now make a living off their creative endeavors, whether they're musicians or artists
Yeah.
or publishers or writers or whatever you want it to be. I think that's a really, really great ideal. And maybe that will challenge, we have ended up with global homogenization
Yeah.
of, music and content and art. And what we have on the other side over here is distributed and idiosyncratic and deeply individual presentations of what the creative endeavor might be. They're very...
Too many suits. Too many suits in the storytelling. Again, the interesting thing is when you take these, I look at the startup world that I've invested in and the power of purpose and the power of storytelling of some founders creates an outsized return and opportunity, right?
Yeah.
So we look at all these subscale communities. The thing I get super excited about and afraid about is that you just can't produce great music or art or a TV show. You have to be able to frame it for your audience. You have to tell the story. You have to align to an overriding purpose that makes people join up, pay money, own NFTs.
Yeah.
So actually, the role of the storyteller
Yeah.
is super, super exciting, I think. I don't quite know how that's going to work,
Yeah.
but because I think a lot of people struggle to tell the story. You look at a founder or a team and you go, and once you get to know them, you go, they're incredible. But the way they're telling their story is shit.
Yeah. Back to the Alexander...
I say with respect.
No, thank you, Andy. Back to the Alexander Nix quote, which I use in the book.
Yeah.
And I actually pull the rug out from under it in the book and actually go, we are neither madmen nor math men. We are myth men, and forgive the pronouns, because you're right. We are actually the people who create the myths and the stories, and that's where the power lies.
So if I give you a good example, and hopefully I don't get in trouble with this, there's this founder called Lydia O'Donnell, right? And she is on a mission to help young girls and women partner their hormone development with their lives and their body self-confidence and their happiness in their life. Like, I look at what she's doing and I go, and I've seen the impact that because she's a high performance athlete, runner.
Yeah.
I've seen the impact that she's had on women and girls, including my daughters. And I go, this is the most compelling mission, right? That, for women to feel good about their hormone development, right? I think it's extraordinary. but her ability to take that and articulate it and build a movement around it will be limited if she can't create partnerships with technical co-founders, with storytelling co-founders
Yeah.
that help bring out what she feels here. And it's a big challenge. It's a really big challenge. What surprised you about your Meta Web3 NFT journey to date?
What has surprised me? Well, I think I'm just going to echo what you said. In making the NFTs and in seeing how they live or die, you very quickly come to appreciate that the NFT without the story is as dead as a dodo, actually, because there's already hundreds of millions of NFTs out there.
Yeah.
And it's only the ones with the stories that survive. It's only the ones that will, manage to rise above the surface.
What are brands that inspire you? What brands that inspire you when you look around now, when you're an OYO person?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll just look at the things that I surround myself with.
Yeah.
So, products by Apple, which I've used for plus 25 years.
Yeah.
And everything to do with Apple. I've worked on the brand, etc. So yes, everything to do with Apple. If I look, products by I'm just looking at my wardrobe. North Face, stuff by North Face. People that have a really strong point of view, but make great products. I've got some friends in the UK, brothers, twins, who run. I can't call it sportswear or adventure wear or active wear, but it's what they make in a company called Volleybag is the future of adventure wear, and every single thing they make, apart from being incredible, has story at the heart of it. So you've got indestructible puffer jackets, you've got 100-year puffer jackets, you've got clothes made out of graphene that will either take heat
That's a cool
or
material.
take cold,
Yeah.
depending on the environment you might want to be in. They are every quarter they release something that is amazing, and I buy their stuff. And there's a big premium on it because it's just really well made, really well thought out, story well told, and you've kind of got to have it.
I'm going to jump back because I should have asked this question before. The technical side of building the NFT that you did
Yeah,
with the smart contract,
yeah.
did you do that, or did you find
No, I
a
was.
team?
Serendipity played a huge part in that. Towards the end of my tenure at Facebook, I reached out to Nicole Upchurch, general manager at Centrality.
Just about to become a partner of Manaki.
Right.
We're
Brilliant.
building a thing called Fanaki.
Yeah,
It's an
right.
accelerator, and they've come on
Fantastic.
board as a partner.
Yeah. I was really fortunate that 3 years ago, Spencer Bailey, who's the head of Facebook New Zealand,
Yes.
introduced me to all the guys at Centrality.
Yep.
And he took me in and I met everybody and we had a really interesting chat about blockchain. And then I just played that card 3 years later when I just reached out. I prepared a presentation and it was a cold email, and I reached out to Nicole, and who I assume is bombarded by thousands of such emails. And she read mine and she responded, and it was about, hey, I'm Andy Blood, I'm a creator, I want to launch my book. I've got an idea that it might work as an NFT if we do some really interesting things to it. Can we continue this conversation? And she said, yes, we can. And I do believe that Nicole half thought I was just another crazy, but we had a great conversation, and our timing plans for, the launch of Lithoverse, New Zealand's first NFT minting platform, coincided with the launch of what I wanted to do with the book. So with a lot of meetings and a lot of help, we dovetailed our ambitions, and it was all the centrality folk that's helped look after the NFT side of
Because you wouldn't be able
how
to do
we.
it otherwise, right?
No, I wouldn't be able to.
Because
No.
like a lot of people now say they want to do an NFT or they want to do a DAO, right? And it's like there is such a shortage of people who can do the hard coding.
Yeah, there's a real shortage because it's not, it does live to the side of all the skill sets of all the people that I've been around for the last 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. It's a different group of people, a very different group of people.
Who are the sleeping giants in the meta world beyond meta?
Epic,
Epic Games.
the makers of Unreal Engine.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing the way that gaming is now the most powerful cultural force on the planet. Not just the active playing of the game, even though that's actually becoming even more significant than it ever was. And then there's the watching of the gaming, which is just becoming content like the likes of which we've never seen before. But you've actually got the production of the gaming, the real time rendering of backdrop and situation. The fact that movies are being transformed by gaming. Everything is being transformed by gaming.
This whole photorealistic.
Our behaviors, our minds, our language, what we watch, everything is now influenced by gaming, and that is a massive shift because for 5 decades, film, TV, and music have influenced everything, and now it's gaming, without a doubt. So, I look at the kids between 8 and 10 and 12. They don't watch anything on Netflix. They don't watch anything on YouTube. They don't do anything that's not related in some way to gaming. And they're growing up with the language, the behaviors,
Yeah.
and it's different. It's really, really different. Gaming's about, the agency of being in control. It's about building worlds, Minecraft and all the others. It's about curation, the selection. Gaming is you at the center of the universe, but then being part of, global communities of people just like you. It's a massive shift. It's a huge cultural shift, and I don't think people have woken up to that.
What do you think old world companies, the Nikes and the Adidases, are thinking about the metaverse? Let alone the Fonterras.
Yeah, well, you've got people like Nike and Adidas already playing their cards this year. So you've got Nike doing all the patents for its digital designs. Literally, so they can start dropping sneakers in the metaverse. It's very. I think it's actually quite a simple journey to go from design to blockchain or NFTs to metaverse.
I
Do
mean,
you know
I
what I
could
mean?
buy. I
'Cause
could buy my.
you're dropping products in there.
I could buy these
Yeah.
and an NFT version.
Yeah, and the behaviors behind sneaker culture, individual, bespoke, limited collection, exclusive collectability, all those same levers drive things right now in the metaverse. And Adidas, I guess, have gone in slightly differently. They've partnered already with the Bored Ape Yacht Club to. In a sense, they are doing what the Adidas fashion, Adidas Originals does really, really well. It makes brilliant relationships with people that are current in popular culture, So that's more the original line versus the sportswear line.
So if you're sitting talking to the board of Fonterra, what would you be saying to them about the metaverse?
I think you'd have to come in with something. I think there's a lot of conversation and a lot of hype and a lot of behaviors that are quite distracting. So I think it's important to separate potentially a cleaner or pure conversation about what the metaverse might mean and what the opportunities might be, to the side of what all the hype is. And there is a branch of economic theory called Rivalrous Goods. And that's all about the creation of goods that other people covet. So your ownership of means, one, somebody else can't have it, but somebody else will do extraordinary things to get it. So that's one road in. If you want to use economic theory into a way to guide an organization, what products can you make that might be considered rivalrous? I think would be a good place to begin.
Okay, so let's shift that to all of those remarkable creatives that we have in New Zealand, particularly Māori, Pacifica,
Yep.
youth, wahine,
Yep.
maybe the more diverse people, although they don't think of themselves as diverse,
Yep.
but they're sitting there with beautiful art, amazing music, comedians, and they know not too much about NFTs or blockchain, but they've had mates go, you should get into that.
Well, I think there's a chance to assert ownership, individuality, actually rivalrous goods. Marriedom is a unique culture voice and has unique perspectives on the world. So by and large, marriedom can achieve its authentication and its value via working on blockchain related endeavors and activities.
So you're excited by that?
Owning it. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. It should be. I think we said earlier, if the world had been homogenized for too long, then the future is potentially deeply individual and idiosyncratic. So the future is more about diversified cultures than it is about homogenized.
So why are there so few female-led NFT projects?
There are at least 50 good ones, because the other day I saw the top 50 female-oriented NFTs, and the ones in that top 50
Are amazing.
are almost considered the equal as anything else in the NFT world. So I'd say yes, there are, and you need to do a little bit of digging and research, and then get excited by it, and then as a if somebody was a female creative, actually take strength from that, an agency, see it, be it, you can do that, and then assert your own view of what the creative endeavor might be in that space. Yeah.
Individual ownership / capitalism versus collective ownership that comes via DAOs, right? Distributed autonomous organizations. Do you think that will show a path forward, the Web3 world, where more collective ownership will come through as opposed to control thesis of individuals?
Yeah. Well, at heart, I'm an optimist. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to be a creative person. But I do tend to balance that with a little bit of pragmatism. So my instinctive response would be, yes, community and community governance in DAOs could be a really, really great thing. I'm sure we'll find a million examples where it isn't. But it could potentially be a really, really great thing. And then, does that then temper, does the effect of DAOs, does that then temper other forms of, does it have a knock-on effect to other systems or, business models or modes of government? So what we'll probably get is, we'll begin with things that are really, really divergent, and then they'll essentially just borrow off each other or influence each other.
So it's going to get messy before.
Well, I don't think it will necessarily get messy.
There'll be lots going on.
I think the two levers will influence each other for the better, but there will be a mixture of positive and negative, I imagine.
I mean, one of the things that excites me about NFTs, other than the artists always having the opportunity to get ongoing revenue stream, with DAOs is the, you are like in digital, you're creating greater connectivity between the users and the benefactors of communities without all the layers
Yeah.
of bureaucracy. Imagine Auckland City as a DAO. Don't think it's ever going to happen. But imagine
Yeah.
that, the immediacy.
Yeah. I do think, there's a lot to be said for, the redistribution or the distribution of the way organizations can be run. But I do also value, again, this is a deeply personal thing in a project, especially in a creative endeavor. I think you've got to have a leader, and that might be you, the individual, the creator. um, I don't know about teams without leaders,
You need the
because invariably someone is a driving force.
yeah. In the
You
linear
know,
world, we talk about you have to have someone crazy enough to drive it through to product market fit. That you can
yeah,
pour gasoline on the
yeah,
fire.
yeah,
You
yeah.
need that.
And that's why. And then when that person has done that, that's why companies scaling will often remove the person who was, you know,
Yeah.
holding the gasoline, and replace them with somebody who isn't.
So
In order
boring.
to scale.
So boring when you
Yeah,
do that.
yeah. There's a brilliant book called Team of Teams, and it was written by some senior figures in the American military, and it came out a couple of years ago. And it's literally how the American military had to reshape everything about itself in the face of a global terrorist threat. So there's innumerable teams of small insurgents around the world, which together were a huge and ever-present threat to the might of the American military. And it just wasn't built in a way that allowed it to deal with or survive or negotiate that complex environment. And the book is all about the complete overturning of the business model, if you like, of the American military, and the structure and the way it was aligned and everything. And Team of Teams is the book, and I would encourage anyone to read or listen to that book because it's fantastic. And it's also the origin of the term VUCA, which is now becoming
Yeah.
very usable in the sense of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and adaptability. So that's what the American military had to become, as opposed to being a giant machine.
So super interesting observationally in the 2000s and 2000s, I used to look at supply chains in North America, organized, control thesis, linear versus supply chains in Asia. And it's a similar thing, chaotic in Asia, right? Chaotic supply chains,
Yeah,
but they worked. And what that analogy you've just told is about, it's almost like unorganized
yeah,
chaos with a centralizing purpose can achieve an outcome.
yeah,
That's the only way they could respond.
yeah.
Now, I have to ask you,
Sorry,
because,
one more thing on that.
yeah,
The lesson for the American military had to be more like the Navy, because what was very interesting about the difference between how the land military operates is command, control, and execute. The Navy has always been, our ships go off around the world, and it's the captain who's firmly in control, because the captain is so far away from the epicenter, they have to be empowered to make all their own
well,
decisions.
they're at the edge.
Yeah. And they are actually, so the distributed model of the Navy is a lot like the distributed model of a DAO. You actually had to take, control at the extremes.
And that's what, one of the things that I get frustrated about now is I look at our model and, I look at my old model at the Ice House, which I love the organization, but then I look at government and how they support small business. And you basically got layers of people who hand out money to people who manage people who talk to small businesses. And in this day and age of digital, you can actually create connectivity where a small business can talk to me on Manaki every single day. And I get so frustrated with government for being so just unaware that you have to push everything to the edge. You can't control it in the center. And you don't need people to manage people, to give money to a small business. And then a small business goes, oh, please, sir, give me the money. I just feel like going, fuck you. But anyway,
Yeah.
I get
But
so
what we find
passionate about
over,
that.
if we look over decades, is that, the pendulum always swings. So we go through an era of, let's make the government as small as it can possibly be,
Yeah.
so that the people who need to do things will do it because they're motivated, they know what's going on, they can drive what's going on, and they can look after what needs to happen. Invariably, then, the free enterprise model will have some shocks. And then, the free enterprise or the capitalist system will then be saved or bailed out by the regulatory bodies.
Oh, yeah.
And then we will have a few years
Then we'll have
where,
organised.
and then we'll go back to the fact that, the central body is back into command and control to get us through what needs to be got through, and survive. And so bit by bit, each one tends to adapt to the other and potentially takes on good, better behaviors that have been informed by the process.
If you were monarchy itself, what would you do? So, we feel a responsibility and opportunity to help members of our community learn about the metaverse, right? Learn first, and then they will take the opportunities, whether they want to set up their own NFTs or do DAOs. We're going to be an information flow. But monarchy as an organisation itself, what would you be advising us
In
to
its
do?
own right,
In its own
as
right.
opposed to looking after everybody else.
Yeah.
Um,
I hope Pat's watching.
Hello, Pat. I would make the most use of, I'm just looking around, of the people, the talent, and the technology you've got at your disposal to make a version of the metaverse, as opposed to waiting for
Yeah.
the arrival of other people's. It doesn't matter whether it succeeds or fails or not. You will you will learn more from doing that than by doing anything else.
Yep. That's what we're doing.
And by doing that, you will inspire, lead, demystify, and democratize the ability of other people around you to do that too.
So we should create an NFT.
Well, it might not be you that builds a metaverse, but you might be the people that inspire the person or team that does.
If you think,
Well, I know you're already doing NFTs.
we're on the path.
But I think there does have to be an element of lead by example, because I think it's such a complex subject that I think leading by example in terms of, we're doing an NFT that might have this business model, or we're doing an NFT that might have this business model, or build this community, or have this angle. It kind of has to be done to show people the way.
And I think what you're saying there, which is an answer to my next question, which is, I think you fundamentally believe there needs to be a bias for action.
Yes,
trial and error.
absolutely.
So
I love that phrase.
There's no silver bullet here. You've just got to get in and get into the arena and learn and play.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, we're getting near the end. So one of the things, how old's your son?
He's 8.
8.
Just turned 8.
What I ask a lot of all my guests is to take yourself to the 15-year-old kid that you were, but now, at your local school back in the UK, the equivalent of you, 15 today. What would you be saying to him or her about the world ahead?
It's all there for you to make it into what it's going to become. Don't let anything hold you back. It's all yours for the making.
You're an optimist.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, actually. What I thought about when you said that is room, right? Room and opportunity and opening paths, which is pretty exciting. And I think we need that for our 15-year-olds, right? I've got a 15-year-old and a 17-year-old, and I don't want them to see converging. I want them to see
Yeah.
I don't want them to see diverging. I want them to see this.
It's it's a bit of a cliche now to only because it's so used and overused. Permission to fail, right?
Yeah.
But if I go back to when my daughter's now 23, if I go back to when my daughter was 4 or 5, and we were looking at the kind of school we wanted my daughter to go into, and having we were on our way to Singapore, so we knew that this sort of it wasn't a lasting situation. Having read all the brochures of all the schools, we chose actually for my daughter Kadima because they explicitly said, we give your children permission to fail.
And did that happen? Like,
And I think it
they were true to it?
it was a great experience. Yeah. And I'm a great believer in if you believe these things, you have to act on them. You can't have a dichotomy between all these things that you talk about and then your actions don't follow suit. In the same way that all the clients I've ever worked for now for the last 2.5, 3 decades, everything that came out of my mouth, I have to do. Otherwise, it's meaningless.
What's next for Bloodster?
What's
for
next
Andy?
for the Bloodster?
What's next
I
for
want
Andy?
to. I'm going to have a short break, and then I want to get back to writing as fast as I possibly can, because I want to marry the two things that I've got a real passion for right now, as much as I can. So that's writing and that's NFTs, and I want to bring them together and actually go all in on that in a way that I've not seen other people do it.
That's pretty exciting. That's going to be next year.
Well, it'll be if not before Christmas, it will be January.
But you're having a holiday
Well, yes, I am.
after this.
I am, and then one of the there's a lot of Facebook values, and there's a lot of the Facebook credo that I really take with me, and some of those things would be speed to impact. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
How quickly can you make whatever it is you're going to make in order to find out if it can have an impact? It is your duty to hack.
Which is why your profile is do things, hack things. Like what is it?
Move fast and hack things.
Yeah.
Move fast and hack things. Yeah. Get to the thing you want to make as fast as humanly possible. And then the final one being, what would you do if you weren't afraid? That's
cool.
Yeah.
Andy, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Really, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Hey, so that's it for today. I've got 2 more talks this year. I've got Year in a Review with Phoebe Harrott from Blackbird later this week, and then the final talk this year is with Alex Smeal, the co-founder of Fluff World. So thanks again to Andy. Put your comments in the Real Talks group on Manaki, and we will give those 2 books to the best comments through. So don't say it was an amazing talk. Share something that's about what action you're going to take as a result of seeing this talk. Thanks all. Have a great rest of the day. Thanks, Andy.
Thank you, Andy.
See you, buddy. Merry Christmas again.
Merry Christmas to you.